The galaxy ignored Earth for centuries, until humans returned with judgment. Part 1: The Forgotten World. The alien ship stayed in Earth's orbit for exactly 43 minutes. That was all the time the surveyor needed to make his decision about humanity's fate. His name was unpronounceable in human languages, but his job was simple. He worked for the Galactic Concord, a government of 12 ancient species that had ruled the galaxy for 40,000 years. His task was to visit new worlds and decide if they were worth anything. Earth, he decided, was not worth anything at all. From his ship, he watched the blue planet spin slowly below him. He saw the cities, the wars, the pollution. He saw nations fighting each other over lines drawn on maps. He saw humans burning dead plants for energy while they choked their own atmosphere. He saw a species that had not even left its own solar system. He typed his report without emotion. Level 2, Primitive World. Fragmented governance, tribal warfare, no faster-than-light potential within standard integration timeline. Recommend quarantine and resource reservation for future harvesting. The report traveled across the galaxy in seconds. The Concord's ruling council read it during their afternoon meal. They voted to accept the recommendation before dessert was served. A beacon was sent to Earth's solar system and placed near the edge, far from where humans could find it. The beacon broadcast a simple message to all civilized species: stay away. This world belongs to the Concord. It will be harvested when ready. And just like that, humanity was forgotten. 300 years passed. On Earth, those 300 years were not kind. The resource wars began in 2089, just 2 years after the alien surveyor left. Nations fought over oil, water, and food. Billions died. Cities burned. For a while, it seemed like humanity would destroy itself completely. But humans were stubborn creatures. Even in their darkest moments, they refused to disappear. From the ashes of the old world, something new emerged. The survivors came together not because they wanted to, but because they had no choice. They called their new government the Terran Sovereignty. It was not perfect. It was not always fair. But it was united, and that unity saved them. The new government made a simple promise to its people. Never again would humanity fight itself. Never again would they waste their strength on internal wars. From now on, all of Earth's resources, all of its genius, all of its determination would point outward, toward the stars. Was born 150 years after the resource wars ended. She grew up on stories of the old world and its foolish conflicts. Her grandmother had survived the war as a child, hiding in underground shelters while the surface burned. The old woman told about the billions who died, about the mistakes that almost ended everything. "We were children playing with fire," her grandmother said, "but we grew up. We had to." Joined the military at 18. She rose through the ranks quickly, not because she was cruel or ruthless, but because she was smart. She understood that true strength was not about destruction. It was about control. It was about knowing when to strike and when to wait. By the time she became admiral, humanity had changed in ways the ancient alien surveyor could never have imagined. The unified Earth had solved its energy problems. It had cleaned its atmosphere. It had built colonies on Mars, on the moons of Jupiter, on asteroids throughout the solar system. And in secret laboratories hidden deep underground, scientists worked on the greatest challenge of all: faster-than-light travel. The Conquered believed that primitive species could not develop FTL technology on their own. It was one of their fundamental rules. Lesser species needed to be uplifted, guided, given the secrets of the universe by their betters. Without help, they would remain trapped in their little solar systems forever. The Conquered was wrong. In the year 2341, a ship called the First Light disappeared from Earth's orbit and reappeared instantly on the other side of the solar system. The scientists cheered. The politicians celebrated. Admiral watched the footage with cold, calculating eyes. Humanity could reach the stars now, But what would they find when they got there? The answer came 6 months later when a scout ship discovered the beacon at the edge of the solar system. Director was the one who decoded its message. He was an older man, patient and methodical, who had spent his entire life preparing for the moment when humanity would meet other species. He had imagined many scenarios: first contact protocols, diplomatic exchanges, trade agreements. He had not imagined this. The beacon's message was clear. Earth was not a free world. It was property. It had been marked for harvesting by an alien government that saw humans as nothing more than resources to be collected when the time was right. Brought the news to Admiral personally. She read the decoded message 3 times before speaking. "How long have we been marked?" she asked. 300 years, replied. "They visited us in 2087. They decided we were primitive and worthless. They planned to come back when our population was larger and our resources more developed. Then they would take everything." Was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm, but something dangerous burned behind her eyes. "They thought we were cattle," she said, "animals to be raised and slaughtered." "Yes. And they left us alone for 300 years. They never checked on us, never wondered if we might grow, never considered that we might become something more." Nodded. "They have ruled the galaxy for 40,000 years. They have seen thousands of primitive species come and go. To them, we are not special. We are not even interesting." Stood and walked to the window of her office. Outside, ships moved through Earth's orbit. Thousands of them. Military vessels, cargo ships, research stations. The product of 3 centuries of unified human effort. "What do you recommend?" she asked without turning around. Had thought about this question for weeks. He had considered many options. They could announce themselves to the galaxy and demand recognition. They could hide and hope the conquered never returned. They could attack immediately and hope to catch their enemies off guard. But was a patient man. He understood that the greatest weapon was not strength or surprise. It was knowledge. "We watch," he said. "We learn, we find out everything about this conquered, their strengths, their weaknesses, their secrets, and when we finally reveal ourselves, we do it on our terms, not theirs." Turned from the window. For the first time, she smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of a predator that had just spotted its prey. "Prepare a reconnaissance fleet," she said. "Small ships, stealth technology. I want eyes in every corner of their space. I want to know everything about them before they even know we exist." Bowed his head. "It will be done." And so began humanity's 50 years of silence. 50 years of watching, learning, and preparing. The galaxy continued to spin, ignorant of the storm that was gathering. The conquered's rulers ate their fine meals and celebrated their endless peace, never knowing that the primitive species they had marked for death was now studying them like specimens under a microscope. On Earth, children grew up knowing a secret that no alien could imagine. Humanity was not alone in the universe, but more importantly, humanity was not weak, not anymore. The day of judgment was coming, and when it arrived, the galaxy would learn a terrible truth. The species they had dismissed as primitive cattle had become something far more dangerous. They had become patient, they had become united, and most frightening of all, they had become angry. The conquered had made a mistake 300 years ago. Now, humanity would make sure they never forgot it. The galaxy ignored Earth for centuries, until humans returned with judgment. Part 2: The Silent Observers. Captain had been watching aliens for 12 years, and she had never let any of them see her. Her ship was called the Silent Dawn. It was small, fast, and completely invisible to every scanner the conquered had ever built. Human engineers had designed it specifically for one purpose: to move through alien space like a ghost, seeing everything and touching nothing. Loved her job. She loved the silence of deep space, the thrill of slipping past alien patrols, the satisfaction of bringing back secrets that no human had ever known before. But she did not love what those secrets revealed. The galaxy, she had learned, was a very old and very tired place. Her current mission had brought her to a world called Prime, the capital of the largest alien empire in the Concord. From her hiding spot behind a small moon, she watched thousands of ships move through the system. Trade vessels, passenger transports, military cruisers, all of them ancient designs, unchanged for thousands of years. That was the first thing had noticed about the Concord. Nothing ever changed. The same 12 species had ruled the galaxy for 40,000 years. Their technology had not improved in 15,000 years. Their borders had not moved in 12,000 years. Their governments, their cultures, their very thoughts seemed frozen in time, like insects trapped in amber. At first, thought this was a sign of perfection. Perhaps these ancient species had solved all problems. Perhaps they had achieved some final state of peace and happiness that humans could not yet understand. Then she discovered the harvest worlds. There were 847 of them scattered across the galaxy. Planets marked with beacons just like Earth. Planets filled with intelligent species who had been deliberately kept primitive, deliberately isolated, deliberately prepared for the day when the conquered would come to take everything from them. Had visited dozens of these worlds. She had watched from orbit as alien children played in fields, never knowing that they were being raised like crops. She had seen civilizations develop art, music, and philosophy while invisible masters waited for them to ripen. It made her sick. She reported everything to Director back on Earth. He collected her reports along with hundreds of others from ships all across the galaxy. Slowly, over years, a complete picture emerged, and that picture explained everything. The Conquered had stopped evolving because they wanted to stop. Doctor was the one who figured it out. She was a scientist who studied alien life. She had spent 20 years analyzing genetic samples that reconnaissance ships had secretly collected from across the galaxy. What she found shocked everyone. The 12 ruling species had changed themselves. Long ago, before the Conquered was even formed, they had modified their own biology. They made themselves live longer, think slower, and feel less. They removed aggression, curiosity, and ambition from their genetic code. They turned themselves into perfect, peaceful, immortal beings. And in doing so, they had killed everything that made them alive. They were afraid, Doctor explained to the Council of Human Leaders. Thousands of years ago, they saw where their wars and conflicts were leading. They saw extinction, so they changed themselves to prevent it. They became incapable of violence, incapable of competition, incapable of change. Then how do they maintain their empire? Admiral asked. How do they keep other species under control? They don't need violence, Doctor replied. They use systems, rules, bureaucracy. Every species in the Conquered knows its place. Every action is regulated. Every thought is guided toward harmony and stability, and any species that might challenge that stability is quarantined, Director finished, marked for harvest, eliminated before they can become a threat. The room was silent. Every human there understood what this meant. The Conquered was not evil in the way humans understood evil. They were not cruel or hateful. They were simply maintaining their perfect, frozen society by removing anything that might disturb it. And humanity, with all its chaos and conflict and uncontrollable ambition, was exactly the kind of disturbance they feared most. Ambassador had spent decades studying alien psychology. She understood how the Conquered's rulers thought better than anyone. When the council asked for her assessment, she did not hesitate. They will never accept us, she said. We are everything they have spent 40,000 years trying to eliminate. We are aggressive, competitive, and unpredictable. Even if we approached them peacefully, even if we offered friendship and cooperation, they would see us as a disease to be cured. Then we destroy them, General suggested. He was a military man, practical and direct. "We have technological advantages they cannot match. We strike fast, eliminate their leadership and take control before they can respond." "And then what?" asked. "We rule a galaxy of slaves who have been engineered to obey. We become the new masters of a system built on harvesting innocent worlds." The debate continued for months. Some wanted war. Some wanted isolation. Some wanted to try diplomacy despite warnings. But Director had a different idea, an idea he had been developing for 50 years. "We do not destroy them," he said. "We do not hide from them, and we do not beg for their acceptance. We judge them." He stood before the council with 50 years of evidence behind him, reports from every reconnaissance mission, genetic analyses from doctor, psychological profiles from ambassador, strategic assessments from general, and records of every crime the conquered had committed against the harvest worlds. "They believe they are perfect," continued. "They believe their system is just and good. They have never been challenged, never been questioned, never been forced to look at what they truly are. We will make them look. We will show them and the entire galaxy what they have done, and then we will offer them a choice." "What choice?" Admiral asked. Smiled. It was the smile of a man who had waited his entire life for this moment. "Change or fall." Captain received her final reconnaissance orders 3 months later. After 12 years of silent observation, humanity was ready to reveal itself. She was to return to Earth immediately and join the first expeditionary fleet. As her ship turned away from Prime for the last time, took one final look at the alien capital. Millions of beings lived there, going about their daily lives without any idea of what was coming. They had never known fear. They had never known challenge. They had never known what it felt like to face something truly unexpected. They were about to learn. Activated her FTL drive and disappeared into the darkness between stars. Behind her, they continued their perfect, peaceful existence. They celebrated their ancient traditions. They praised their wise leaders. They congratulated themselves on building a civilization that would last forever. They did not know that their forever had already ended. Somewhere in the vastness of space, a fleet was gathering. 3,000 ships crewed by a species that had been dismissed as primitive cattle, a species that had survived its own destruction and emerged stronger, a species that had learned patience, unity, and above all, justice. The galaxy had ignored Earth for 300 years. Now Earth was coming to remind them why that was a mistake. The galaxy ignored Earth for centuries, until humans returned with judgment. Part 3, The Reckoning begins. Emperor was 1,007 years old, and he had never been surprised in his entire life. Surprise was an emotion for lesser beings. It came from ignorance, from inability to predict what would happen next, but had ruled the empire for 800 years. He had seen everything. He knew everything. Nothing in the galaxy happened without his knowledge. So when 3,000 alien ships appeared above his without warning, he did not feel surprise. He felt something he had not felt in centuries. He felt confused. "What are they?" he demanded, staring at the display screen that showed the impossible fleet. The ships were black as empty space, shaped unlike anything in the Conquered's databases. They had appeared from nowhere, bypassing every sensor and patrol in the system. His advisors had no answers. The ships matched no known design. Their energy signatures were completely foreign, and their weapons, now visible as ports opened along their hulls, were aimed directly at the Imperial Palace. Then the message came. It was broadcast on every frequency, in every language, to every device on the planet. The voice was female, calm, and absolutely without fear. 300 years ago, you visited our world. You stayed for 43 minutes. You decided we were primitive. You marked us for harvest. You called us cattle. Emperor's confusion turned to something else, something cold and heavy that settled in his stomach like a stone. We are the humans of Earth. We have come to discuss this. Admiral stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Judgment, and watched the chaos unfold below. There were scrambling. Military vessels rushed to defend the communication channels overflowed with panicked messages. In the palace, she knew, the Emperor was calling for the ancient defense fleets that had protected the conquered for. Those fleets were already on their way, was counting on it. All ships report ready, Commander Minu said from his tactical station. He was a young man, brilliant and precise, who had designed the fleet's battle doctrine. Enemy forces gathering at coordinates 77 Mark III. Estimated strength, 400 vessels. Nodded, 400 ships against her 3,000. And more importantly, 400 ships that had not seen real combat in 12,000 years, crewed by beings who had genetically removed their capacity for aggression. Wait for them to form up, she ordered. I want them all in position before we begin. The Conquered's defense fleet was impressive to look at. Massive vessels covered in golden decorations, bristling with weapons that had once terrified the galaxy. They arranged themselves in perfect formation, a wall of ancient power between the human fleet and Their commander sent a message to the invaders. It was full of threats and demands. Leave immediately or be destroyed. The Conquered had ruled for 40,000 years. No primitive species could challenge their might. Did not bother responding. Begin precision strikes, she said simply. What happened next would be studied by military historians for centuries. The human fleet moved as one, each ship perfectly coordinated with the others. They did not charge directly at the enemy. They did not scatter or try to surround them. Instead, they executed a dance of destruction so precise it seemed impossible. Energy beams struck the conquered ships at exact points calculated by Commander Minu's tactical systems. Engine ports, weapon arrays, shield generators. Each shot disabled a critical system without destroying the ship entirely. Each strike was so perfectly placed that the crews inside were not even injured. The conquered commanders did not know how to respond. Their tactics were 12,000 years old, designed for enemies who fought the same way they did. But the humans did not fight fair. They did not follow the rules. They struck from angles that should have been impossible, predicted responses before they were made, and stayed one step ahead of everything the defenders tried. In 6 hours it was over. 400 conquered warships drifted helplessly in space, their weapons destroyed, their engines dead, their crews alive but completely defeated. Not a single vessel had been destroyed. Not a single alien had died. His message to Emperor was simple. Your defense fleet has been neutralized. Your planet is defenseless. We are prepared to destroy everything you have, but we choose not to. We wish to talk. The Emperor had no choice but to agree. The meeting took place in the Imperial Palace itself. Came alone, walking through halls that had been built before humans learned to write. Sat on his ancient throne, surrounded by advisors who could not hide their fear. You cannot do this, the Emperor said. His voice was strong, but his eyes betrayed him. The conquered will not allow it. The other empires will unite against you. You will be crushed. Did not sit. She stood before the throne like a prosecutor before a court. The conquered has not fought a war in 12,000 years, she replied. Your soldiers do not know combat. Your generals do not know strategy. Your weapons have not been improved since my ancestors were living in caves. You have spent 40,000 years making yourselves weak, and now you face a species that has spent 300 years making itself strong. Then destroy us, shouted, his ancient composure finally breaking. Take what you want. Is that not what conquerors do? We are not conquerors, said. We are judges. She activated a device on her wrist. Holographic images filled the throne room. Images of harvest worlds. Images of species waiting to be slaughtered. Images of children on planets marked for death, playing and laughing without any idea of their fate. 847 worlds, said. That is how many species you have marked for extinction. Billions of lives, countless civilizations, all treated as resources to be harvested whenever you need them. Face hardened. They are primitives, they cannot contribute to the conquered. They are better used as what? Cattle? His voice turned cold. We were cattle once. You marked us 300 years ago. You planned to harvest our world when we grew numerous enough. She stepped closer to the throne, and for the first time in 800 years, Emperor felt afraid. You made a mistake, said. You assumed that primitives would stay primitive. You assumed that isolation would keep us weak. You assumed that because you had stopped evolving, everyone else would too. But we did not stop. We grew. We learned. We became something you cannot control and cannot predict. What do you want? Asked, his voice barely a whisper. Smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I want you to admit what you are. I want you to face the truth about your perfect civilization, and I want you to make a choice. Change what you have built or watch it crumble. And if we refuse? Turned and walked toward the door. She paused at the threshold and looked back at the ancient emperor on his ancient throne. Then we will free every harvest world in the galaxy. We will give them the technology you have them. We will tell them the truth about what you planned, and we will let them decide what happens next. She left without waiting for a response. In the days that followed, the Concord's 12 ruling species gathered for an emergency summit. They debated, argued, and pleaded for solutions. Some wanted to negotiate. Some wanted to attack despite the obvious danger. Some wanted to simply wait and hope the humans would go away. But Director, watching from a stealth ship hidden in the system, knew what they would decide. They would choose denial. They would choose pride. They would refuse to admit that their 40,000-year empire was built on a mountain of corpses. And that was exactly what humanity wanted. The liberation had already begun. The galaxy ignored Earth for centuries, until humans returned with judgment. Part 4: The Liberation. The quarantine beacon around 4 went dark at exactly midnight local time. For 800 years, that beacon had kept the galaxy away from the small blue-green world and its people. Now it was just floating metal, and the people below had no idea that everything was about to change. Captain landed her ship in a clearing near the largest city. She stepped out onto alien grass under an alien sky and took a deep breath of air that no human had ever breathed before. Then she walked toward the city, alone and unarmed. They were an amphibious species. They had large eyes adapted for seeing underwater, smooth skin that changed color with their emotions, and webbed fingers that could manipulate tools with surprising precision. When entered their city, hundreds of them gathered to stare at her. They had never seen an alien before. They had never even imagined that aliens could exist. Their scientists had studied the stars for centuries and found no evidence of other life. They had concluded with great sadness that they were alone in the universe. Raised her hands to show she was not a threat. She spoke slowly, using a translation device that converted her words into the language. My name is, I come from a world called Earth. You are not alone, you have never been alone, and I have come to tell you the truth. The elder beneath waves was the oldest and of the. She came to meet that evening, walking slowly on her aged legs but with eyes that were still sharp and curious. She listened without interruption as explained everything. The galactic conquered, the quarantine beacons, the harvest worlds, the 800 years that they had been trapped on their planet, watched from afar by beings who saw them as nothing more than future resources. When finished, Elder Beneath Waves was silent for a long time. The colors of her skin shifted through shades of blue and gray, showing emotions that could not fully understand. Why did they do this? The elder finally asked. Because they were afraid, replied. They were afraid that if you grew strong, you might challenge them. They were afraid that your curiosity, your ambition, Your desire to reach the stars might disrupt their perfect, unchanging civilization. So they kept you trapped here, waiting for the day when they would come to take everything from you. And your people, the humans, smiled. We were marked for harvest too, 300 years ago, but they made a mistake. They left us alone for too long. We grew strong while they grew weak, and now we have come to set things right. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small device. It was a data crystal containing everything they would need to begin their journey to the stars. FTL theory, energy generation, medical technology, everything that humanity had developed during its centuries of isolation. This is a gift, said. Not a trade, not a loan, not a price for alliance. It is simply yours because you deserve it, because you have always deserved it. Elder Beneathwaves took the crystal with trembling hands. Colors rippled across her skin in patterns that later learned represented joy, hope, and overwhelming gratitude. What do you want in return? The elder asked. Shook her head. We want you to be free. We want you to grow and explore and become whatever you choose to become. And when you are ready, we want you to help us free others. Across the galaxy, the same scene was playing out on hundreds of worlds. Human ships appeared from nowhere, bearing gifts of technology and truth. They found species that had been isolated for centuries, or species that had given up hope of ever reaching beyond their own skis. They told these species about the conquered's crimes. They gave them the tools to break free. And then they left, asking nothing in return except the promise of friendship. Lieutenant was 24 years old, the youngest officer in the Liberation Fleet. She had grown up in a world that already knew about the conquered, already knew about humanity's mission. For her generation, the liberation was not revenge or justice. It was simply the right thing to do. Her ship was assigned to a world called, a rocky planet orbiting a red dwarf star. There were a silicon-based species, beings of living crystal who communicated through patterns of light. They had been quarantined for 600 years, and they had spent that entire time wondering why no one ever answered their signals to the stars. When landed on their world, she found a civilization that had nearly lost hope. They had built enormous radio telescopes, sending messages into the void for generations. They had received nothing but silence. Many of them had concluded that they were a mistake, a single spark of consciousness in an empty universe. Showed them the truth. She showed them the beacon that had blocked their signals. She showed them the records of conquered surveyors who had visited their world and marked it for harvest. She showed them that they were not alone, not a mistake, not forgotten. They did not cry. Their bodies could not produce tears, but they gathered in their millions, their crystalline forms glowing with light patterns that meant gratitude, relief, and fierce, burning anger at those who had stolen their future. We will remember this, their leader told through a translation device. We will remember what the conquered did, and we will remember what humanity gave us. Back on Earth, Counselor watched the reports with growing concern. She had supported the liberation at first. The harvest worlds deserved freedom. The conquered deserved to face the consequences of their crimes. But as month after month passed, as hundreds of worlds were freed and turned against their former masters, she began to see a danger that others seemed to ignore. We are creating an empire, she said during a council meeting. We claim to be liberators, but look at what we have built. Hundreds of species, all grateful to us, all looking to us for leadership, all ready to follow wherever we lead. They are free to make their own choices, Director replied. We have forced nothing on them. Have we not? We gave them technology they cannot fully understand. We told them who to hate. We pointed them at the conquered and said, these are your enemies. How is that different from what the conquered did? The council chamber fell silent, continued her voice soft but firm. I do not doubt our intentions, but I have studied history. I know what happens when one group believes it has the right to judge others. I know how easily liberation can become conquest. I know how quickly the liberator can become the tyrant." Admiral, who had been listening quietly, finally spoke. "What do you suggest we do? Abandon the harvest worlds, leave them to the conquered's revenge?" "No," said, "I suggest we remember why we started this. We wanted justice, not power. We wanted to end the conquered's tyranny, not replace it with our own. When this is over, we must step back. We must let these species find their own path. We must resist the temptation to become what we are fighting against." Nodded slowly. "You are right. The hardest part of this war will not be defeating the conquered. It will be refusing to become them." In space, the conquered was collapsing. Their economy had depended on the harvest worlds. Without those resources, their perfect civilization began to crack. Planets that had been peaceful for now saw shortages and unrest. Species that had lived in harmony for 40,000 years began to blame each other for their troubles. Some conquered leaders wanted to negotiate with the humans. They offered territory, resources, even apologies. But they could not understand why the humans refused everything except one thing: accountability. "We do not want your worlds," Director told them. "We do not want your resources. We want you to stand before the galaxy and admit what you have done. We want you to face the species you have wronged and accept their judgment." The conquered refused. They could not admit fault. They had spent 40,000 years believing they were perfect. To accept blame would destroy everything they believed about themselves. And so the war continued, not with weapons but with truth. Human ships spread across the galaxy, telling stories, sharing evidence, opening eyes that had been deliberately kept closed. The conquered's careful control broke apart piece by piece as the beings they ruled learned what their leaders truly were. Captain, now leading a fleet of ships from a dozen different species, watched the conquered's final defenses crumble. Beside her, Elder Beneathwaves commanded the first warship ever built, a vessel constructed in just 3 years using human technology and determination. "They are breaking," the Elder observed. "Soon there will be nothing left." "That is when the real work begins," replied. "Destroying an empire is easy. Building something better is hard." She looked at the stars, thinking of all the worlds that were now free, all the species that were now looking to the future instead of waiting for death. Humanity had given them hope. Now it was time to give them something even more valuable. It was time to give them justice. The galaxy ignored Earth for centuries, until humans returned with judgment. Part 5: Judgment. The trial was broadcast to every world in the galaxy. Trillions of beings watched as the 12 rulers of the conquered sat before a tribunal that represented species they had never considered worthy of attention. The courtroom was built on neutral ground, a space station constructed specifically for this moment. It floated between stars, belonging to no one, a symbol of the new order that was about to be born. Director presented the evidence: 50 years of documentation, recordings of conquered meetings where harvest schedules were discussed, genetic samples showing how the ruling species had engineered themselves into immortal, stagnant beings, testimony from hundreds of worlds that had been marked for extinction. The evidence was overwhelming. The crimes were undeniable. Even the conquered's defenders could not argue with the facts. They could only argue about what those facts meant. "We did what was necessary for stability," Emperor declared. He was the last of the 12 to speak, the oldest and most proud. "We created peace. We ended wars. We built a civilization that lasted 40,000 years. What did your species do during that time? You killed each other over dirt and water. You nearly destroyed your own world. You have no right to judge us." Director stood calmly before the ancient emperor. "You are correct," he said. "Humanity is flawed. We have committed terrible crimes against ourselves. We have made mistakes that nearly ended our existence. But we faced our mistakes. We learned from them. We changed." He gestured at the assembled tribunal. Representatives from hundreds of species sat in judgment, including many from the harvest worlds that had been freed. You did not face your mistakes. You did not learn. You did not change. Instead, you froze yourselves in time and declared that you had achieved perfection, and anyone who might challenge that perfection you marked for death. The courtroom was silent. Director continued. You ask what gives us the right to judge you. I will tell you. It is not our power, though we have proven we are stronger. It is not our technology, though we have shown we are more advanced. It is simply this. We are willing to change and you are not. We are willing to grow and you are not. We are willing to face the future and you are not. He turned to address the tribunal. The question before this court is not whether the conquered committed crimes. That has been established beyond doubt. The question is what should happen now, and that question is not for humanity to answer alone. The tribunal deliberated for 7 days. Representatives from every species argued and debated. The harvest worlds wanted vengeance. The conquered's own subjects wanted stability. Some wanted the 12 rulers executed. Others wanted them imprisoned forever. The arguments seemed endless. Then Lieutenant asked to speak. She was the youngest person in the room, a representative of the generation that had grown up knowing about the conquered but never fearing them. When she stood before the tribunal, many of the older delegates expected her to call for harsh punishment. Youth often wanted revenge. They were wrong. I have listened to everyone's arguments, said. I have heard the victims call for justice. I have heard the conquered's defenders plead for mercy. Both sides make valid points, but I think we are asking the wrong question. She walked to the center of the courtroom, looking at the 12 rulers who had controlled the galaxy for 40,000 years. Destroying them would be easy. We could execute them, imprison them, strip them of everything they have. But what would that accomplish? We would simply be replacing one tyranny with another. We would be proving that we are no different from them. Emperor stared at her with ancient eyes. Then what do you suggest, child? That we be forgiven, that our crimes be forgotten? Shook her head. No, your crimes will never be forgotten. They will be remembered for as long as civilization exists. But I do not suggest forgiveness either. I suggest something much harder. I suggest that you be made equal. The courtroom murmured in confusion, continued. You have ruled for 40,000 years. You have sat above everyone else, judging them, controlling them, deciding who lives and who dies. My suggestion is simple. Take that away. Not your lives, not your freedom, but your power, your thrones, your special status. Make you the same as everyone else. She turned to address the entire tribunal. Let them live among the species they once oppressed. Let them work beside beings they once marked for harvest. Let them earn their place in the galaxy through their actions, not their birth or their history. Let them experience what it is like to be ordinary. That is not justice, one of the harvest world representatives protested. That is mercy they do not deserve. No, replied. It is the hardest punishment of all. Think about it. For 40,000 years they have believed they were better than everyone else. They have been masters of the galaxy. Now they will be nothing special. They will have to prove their worth like everyone else. They will have to face the species they wronged and live beside them as neighbors, not rulers. She looked directly at Emperor. You said we have no right to judge you because we are flawed. You are correct. We are flawed, but we try to be better. We try to grow and change and improve. That is what you will do now. You will learn what it means to be ordinary. You will learn what it means to have no power except what you earn through kindness and cooperation. And you will have the rest of your very long lives to think about what you did. The tribunal voted the next day. Its proposal passed by a narrow margin. The conquered was dissolved. Its territory was divided among the species who had lived under its rule. The 12 ruling species kept their lives and their freedom, but lost everything else. Their thrones were taken. Their special status was revoked. They became ordinary citizens of a galaxy they had once controlled. Emperor stood alone in the observation deck of the station, watching the stars he had ruled for 800 years. Admiral found him there, standing in silence. "You think this is mercy," he said without turning. "It is not. You have given me the worst punishment possible. You have made me irrelevant." Stood beside him, "That was the point. I will never forgive you." "I do not need your forgiveness," turned to face him. "But perhaps in time you will understand why we did this. Perhaps you will learn what we learned, that true strength is not about power or control. It is about knowing when to use power and when to let it go." She left him there, staring at the stars. He would live for many more centuries, ordinary and powerless, watching the galaxy he had ruled become something new. The Galactic Assembly met for the first time 1 year later. Every world sent a representative. Every species had one vote. Humanity took no special position, sitting among the others as equals rather than leaders. Director, now Earth's representative, gave the opening address. "We have destroyed an empire," he said. "But empires are easy to destroy. The hard work begins now. We must build something better, something that does not depend on fear or control, something that allows every species to grow and change and reach for whatever future they choose." He paused, looking at the thousands of beings gathered before him. "Humanity started this, but humanity cannot finish it alone. We need all of you. Your wisdom, your perspectives, your dreams. We need you to help us build a galaxy where no world is ever marked for harvest again, where no species is ever dismissed as primitive cattle, where every child on every world can look up at the stars and know that the universe is theirs to explore." Captain did not attend the Assembly's first meeting. She was already gone, exploring the edges of known space in her ship, the Silent Dawn. The old Concord's borders meant nothing now. The entire galaxy was open to anyone brave enough to venture into the unknown. Admiral retired to a small colony world, far from Earth and its politics. She had fought her war and won. Now she wanted peace. She spent her days gardening and watching the sunset, finally free from the weight she had carried for so long. Elder Beneathwaves became one of the Assembly's most respected members. The freed, after 800 years of isolation, became known throughout the galaxy for their art, their philosophy, and their kindness. They never forgot what humanity had given them, but they also became much more than what humanity had imagined. And Lieutenant became the first human born after the liberation to serve as Earth's representative to the Assembly. She carried with her a simple message, one that humanity had learned through centuries of suffering and growth. "We are not your masters, we are not your judges, we are not your superiors, we are your neighbors, and we are honored to share the stars with you." On a small planet in a forgotten corner of the galaxy, a child and a human child played together in a garden. They did not know about the wars their ancestors had fought. They did not care about the history between their peoples. They were just two children, laughing and exploring, reaching toward a future that belonged to them both. The galaxy had ignored Earth for 300 years. Now Earth was part of something much greater than any empire. It was part of a family of species, all different, all growing, all reaching for the stars together. The Conquered had believed that stability was the highest goal. They had frozen themselves to achieve it, but they had forgotten something important. The universe was not meant to be still. It was meant to grow, to change, to evolve. That was its nature. That was its beauty. Humanity had learned this lesson through fire and blood. Now they had shared it with the galaxy. And the galaxy would never be the same. In the end, the punishment for the Conquered's crimes was not destruction or imprisonment. It was something far more powerful. It was hope. Hope that even the oldest mistakes could be corrected. Hope that even the most frozen hearts could learn to change. Hope that the future did not have to repeat the past. The galaxy had ignored Earth for centuries. Now Earth had shown them that being ignored was the greatest gift they could have received. because in that long silence, humanity had become something the galaxy had never seen before. They had become merciful, they had become wise, they had become patient. And most importantly, they had become kind. That kindness would echo through the stars forever.